In the heart of a lush glasshouse, where exotic orchids whisper secrets under steamy panes, a deadly poison strikes without warning, claiming a life amid the petals. Welcome to the Glasshouse Death. Orchids hiding a killer, a Hercule Poirot, mystery that twists like vines in the night. Grab a cup of tea, take a seat, and let the intrigue unfold. If you're hooked on the suspense, hit subscribe. Your support means the world to us. Chapter 1. The Invitation to Eden. The rolling hills of the English countryside cradled the sprawling estate of Sir Reginald Hawthorne, a name synonymous with wealth, prestige, and an almost obsessive devotion to botany. At the heart of his property stood a marvel of Victorian engineering, a grand glasshouse, its panes glistening like diamonds under the pale September sun. Inside, a jungle of exotic orchids thrived, their delicate petals masking secrets as dark as the soil they grew in. Sir Reginald had invited a small eclectic group to his estate for a weekend of showcasing his floral empire, and among them was none other than Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a moustache as precise as his mind. Poirot stepped off the train at the nearby station, his polished shoes clicking on the platform, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. The air carried a chill, tinged with the promise of rain, and as he adjusted his coat, he felt a familiar prickle, a sense that this weekend would demand every ounce of his little grey cells. The guests gathered in the estate's opulent drawing room, where crystal chandeliers cast soft light over mahogany furniture and portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Sir Reginald, a robust man with a florid complexion and a booming laugh, played the perfect host, pouring sherry and making introductions. Lady Evelyn Hawthorne, his wife, glided through the room with the grace of a dancer, her emerald eyes betraying a quiet unease beneath her polished smile. Dr. Marcus Hale, a botanist whose rivalry with Sir Reginald was the stuff of academic legend, stood stiffly by the fireplace, his fingers drumming against a glass as if impatient to unearth some hidden grievance. Miss Clara Voss, a young journalist with a sharp bob and sharper ambition, clutched a notebook, her pen poised to capture any hint of scandal. Then there was Count Victor Laszlo, a mysterious figure from Eastern Europe, his heavy accent and hooded gaze making him as enigmatic as the orchids themselves. Poirot, ever observant, noted the subtle dynamics. Lady Evelyn's fleeting glance at Dr. Hale, Miss Voss's relentless curiosity, and the Count's hand brushing a small vial labelled fertilizer in his pocket. Sir Reginald led the group, to his pride and joy, the glasshouse. The heavy glass doors creaked open, releasing a wave of humid air thick with the sweet, earthy scent of orchids. Inside, it was a paradise out of time. Vines climbed trellises, mist curled from sprinklers, and orchids in every shade. Vibrant purples, ghostly whites, and blood-red scarlets bloomed under carefully calibrated lights. "These are my children," Sir Reginald said, his voice reverent as he gestured to a phalaenopsis with petals like velvet daggers. "Some are rarer than diamonds, and just as dangerous if mishandled." He launched into a passionate lecture, sharing tips for orchid care that captivated even Poirot, who knew little of horticulture. "Orchids," Sir Reginald explained, "demand high humidity, around 60 to 80%, and indirect light to mimic their jungle origins. Use bark or moss for drainage," he advised, "and water sparingly, as overwatering rots roots faster than neglect." He demonstrated repotting a cattleya, his hands deft as he teased apart tangled roots, warning that a stressed orchid could wilt in days without proper care. The group listened, some more intently than others. Miss Voss scribbled furiously, her questions probing. Had Sir Reginald ever crossed ethical lines to acquire his collection? Dr. Hale snorted at the mention of a rare hybrid, muttering about a stolen patent from years ago. Lady Evelyn hovered near her husband, her smile tight, while Count Laszlo lingered by a cluster of dendrobiums, his fingers brushing the vial again. Poirot, standing slightly apart, absorbed every detail, the way Dr. Hale's jaw clenched when Sir Reginald boasted of an Amazonian orchid smuggled at great cost, or how Lady Evelyn's hand trembled as she adjusted a flower pot. Over tea in the Glasshouse's small conservatory, Sir Reginald shared more practical tips. Fertilize lightly, with a balanced mix, like 20-20-20, diluted to a quarter strength, and mist leaves to mimic morning dew. He showed them a trick for spotting pests. Tiny white specks on leaves could signal spider mites, treatable with neem oil. Poirot, sipping his tea, filed away these details, sensing they might matter more than anyone realized. As dusk settled, the guests dispersed to their rooms, their chatter fading into the creaking quiet of the old house. But Poirot lingered in the Glasshouse, his eyes tracing the shadows cast by swaying orchid stems. The air felt heavier now, not just with humidity, but with unspoken tensions, jealousies, rivalries, and secrets coiled like roots beneath the surface. He noticed a faint scratch on a glass pane near the rare Phalaenopsis, as if someone had tampered with the lock. A single petal lay crushed on the floor, its edge smeared with something dark. Death, Poirot sensed, was already taking root among the blooms, its scent masked by the orchid's cloying sweetness. The stage was set for a mystery that would unravel like a vine, each twist revealing a new layer of deceit. What lay ahead would test even his formidable intellect, pulling us deeper into a labyrinth where beauty hid a killer. Chapter 2. The Scream in the Night. The moon hung low over Sir Reginald Hawthorne's estate, casting a silver glow through the glasshouse panes, where shadows danced among the orchids, like spectres waiting to strike. Inside the grand house, the guests had settled into their rooms, the creak of floorboards and murmur of distant voices fading into silence. Hercule Poirot, however, lay awake in his guest suite, his mind restless, replaying the day's subtle tensions, the guarded glances, the veiled barbs, the mysterious vial in Count Laszlo's pocket. The clock struck midnight, its chime echoing faintly, when a piercing scream shattered the stillness, slicing through the night like a blade. It came from the direction of the Glasshouse, urgent and raw, pulling Poirot from his bed in an instant. He slipped on his dressing gown, his movements swift yet precise, and hurried down the oak-panelled corridor. The scream had roused the others too. Doors flung open, and footsteps converged toward the Glasshouse. Lady Evelyn appeared first, her nightgown hastily covered by a shawl, her face pale as moonlight. Dr. Marcus Hale followed, his hair dishevelled, a flashlight clutched in his hand. Miss Clara Voss, ever the journalist, was already scribbling in a small notebook, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. Count Victor Laszlo brought up the rear, his expression unreadable, though his hand hovered near his pocket once more. Poirot led the group, his calm demeanour a stark contrast to their frantic energy, as they pushed through the heavy glass doors into the humid embrace of the Glasshouse. There, sprawled beneath a trellis of vibrant dendrobiums, lay Sir Reginald Hawthorne, unmoving, his eyes staring blankly at the glass ceiling. A faint froth clung to his lips, and his hand clutched a crushed orchid, its petals scattered like confetti across his chest. The air was thick with the metallic tang of death, mingling with the orchid's cloying sweetness. Lady Evelyn gasped, clutching Dr. Hale's arm, while Miss Voss whispered, "This is no accident." Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers examining the scene with surgical precision. The crushed orchid was the rare Phalaenopsis Sir Reginald had shown them earlier. Its stem snapped as if torn in a struggle. Nearby, a small glass vial, empty, glinted under the artificial lights, its label smudged but legible. Fertilizer. Poirot's eyes narrowed. This was no gardening mishap. The group stood frozen, their shadows pooling around the body like ink. Poirot's voice cut through the tension, soft but commanding. "We must not touch anything," he said, rising to his feet. "This is a crime scene, and the truth lies in the details." He scanned the glasshouse, noting the faint scratches on the lock he'd seen earlier, now joined by a fresh smudge of dirt on the floor. A single footprint, too small for Sir Reginald's boots, pressed into the soil near a cluster of cattleyas. Dr. Hale muttered about checking the body, claiming his medical expertise, but Poirot waved him off. "Non, non, monsieur. We wait for the authorities. But first I must ask, where were each of you when the scream was heard?" Lady Evelyn stammered that she'd been in her room, unable to sleep when she heard the cry. Dr. Hale claimed he was reading in the library, though his trembling hands suggested otherwise. Miss Voss admitted to sneaking downstairs for a glass of water, her room too stuffy. Count Laszlo, his voice smooth as silk, said he'd been writing a letter in his suite, though he offered no proof. Poirot listened, his moustache twitching slightly, as if the lies were already taking shape in his mind. He moved to the vial, careful not to disturb it, and noted its proximity to a water jug on a nearby table, half empty, with a faint cloudy residue swirling inside. The glasshouse seemed to close in around them, its humid air pressing against their skin. Miss Voss, unable to resist, snapped a photograph with her small camera, the flash startling everyone. "For the story," she said, almost defiantly, as Dr. Hale glared at her. Lady Evelyn sank onto a bench, her hands twisting her shawl, while Count Laszlo remained eerily composed, his eyes darting to the vial. Poirot's gaze swept over them all, cataloguing their reactions, their fear, their guilt, their secrets. He knew the killer was among them, hidden in plain sight, their motive as tangled as the orchid roots beneath their feet. As the distant wail of police sirens approached, Poirot stepped back, his mind already weaving a web of possibilities. The glasshouse, once a sanctuary of beauty, was now a stage for murder, its every bloom a potential clue. The night had only begun to reveal its truths, and Poirot's little grey cells were humming with purpose. The mystery was deepening, pulling us toward the next twist in this deadly dance, where every glance and gesture would bring us closer to unmasking a killer. Chapter 3. Shadows of Suspicion. The glasshouse, now bathed in the harsh glow of police lanterns, buzzed with a sombre energy as officers cordoned off the scene of Sir Reginald Hawthorne's death. The air remained thick with humidity, but a chill had settled over the guests, their faces etched with shock and suspicion. Hercule Poirot stood near the body, his eyes darting between the crushed Phalaenopsis and the empty vial, while the local constable, a gruff man named Inspector Barrow, barked orders to secure the area. The guests huddled near the glasshouse entrance, their whispers sharp and accusing, as if the orchids themselves were eavesdropping. Poirot, ever composed, knew the truth lay not just in the physical clues, but in the tangled web of motives now surfacing among the living. Inspector Barrow, his notebook in hand, began questioning the group, his tone blunt and impatient. He demanded alibis, timelines, and explanations, but Poirot observed silently, noting how each guest's story shifted under scrutiny. Lady Evelyn, her voice trembling, insisted she'd heard nothing until the scream, claiming she was alone in her room, though her shawl bore a faint stain of soil, unnoticed by the others. Dr. Marcus Hale, his earlier agitation replaced by a forced calm, said he'd been in the library, but a torn page from a botanical journal peeked from his pocket, suggesting a more restless night. Miss Clara Voss, her journalist instincts undimmed, offered a detailed account of her movements. Too detailed, Poirot thought, as if rehearsed. Count Victor Laszlo, smooth and unruffled, repeated his claim of writing a letter, but his eyes lingered on the vial, betraying a flicker of unease. Poirot stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. "Monsieur Inspector," he said, "permit me to examine the surroundings. The little grey cells, they require clarity." Barrow grunted but allowed it, and Poirot moved with purpose, his gaze sweeping the glasshouse floor. He noticed a trail of disturbed soil leading from the body to a cluster of Vanda orchids, where a single leaf bore a faint smear of what looked like ink. Nearby, a gardening tool, a small trowel, lay discarded, its handle smudged with a residue that glistened oddly under the lantern light. Poirot crouched, his gloved fingers hovering over the trowel, and murmured, "This is no ordinary dirt. Something was buried here, perhaps, or uncovered." He glanced at the water jug on the table, its cloudy contents now sealed in an evidence bag by the police, and wondered if the vial's contents had tainted it. The guests watched Poirot's movements, their tension palpable. Dr. Hale shifted uncomfortably when Poirot lingered near the Vandas, while Miss Voss's pen paused, her eyes narrowing as if piecing together her own theory. Lady Evelyn clutched her shawl tighter, her gaze darting to the glass-house door as if she longed to flee. Count Laszlo, however, approached Poirot, his voice low. "You suspect poison, do you not, Monsieur Poirot? A botanist's weapon, perhaps." Poirot met his gaze, his moustache twitching. "Perhaps, Count, but the weapon is only half the puzzle. The other half is why." Laszlo's smile was thin, revealing nothing. As the police continued their work, Poirot gathered the guests in the conservatory, away from the body. He paced slowly, his hands clasped behind his back, and began to probe. Sir Reginald was proud, yes, but pride makes enemies. Who among you felt his shadow too heavy? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Lady Evelyn spoke first, her voice brittle. "He was my husband, Monsieur Poirot. I loved him, despite his obsessions." Dr. Hale scoffed, muttering about stolen research, while Miss Voss hinted at rumours of Sir Reginald's shady dealings in the orchid trade. Laszlo remained silent, his fingers brushing his pocket again, as if the vial, or its absence, haunted him. Poirot's mind raced, connecting fragments, the footprint too small for Sir Reginald, the ink-smeared leaf, the trowel's odd residue. He recalled the glasshouse's humid air, how it could mask subtle scents, like that of a poison. The police, meanwhile, found a torn scrap of paper near the body, its edges singed, bearing the words, "Debt repaid." Inspector Barrow dismissed it as irrelevant, but Poirot tucked the detail away, sensing its weight. The guests' alibis were flimsy, their motives murky. Jealousy, revenge, or greed could drive any of them to murder. Yet the glasshouse itself seemed to hold the key, its silent blooms guarding secrets only Poirot's keen intellect could unearth. As the first light of dawn crept through the panes, casting long shadows across the orchids, Poirot knew the investigation was only beginning. The police would do their part, but his little grey cells were already chasing a deeper truth. The killer's hand had moved in the night, and every glance, every lie, brought Poirot closer to unmasking them. The glasshouse, with its beauty and danger, was a puzzle waiting to be solved, leading us into the next twist of this deadly mystery. Chapter 4. The Hidden Correspondence. Dawn broke over the Hawthorne estate, painting the glasshouse in hues of gold and amber, but the warmth did little to dispel the chill of murder lingering in the air. The police had sealed off the crime scene, and Sir Reginald's body was removed under Inspector Barrow's watchful eye, leaving the guests confined to the main house under orders to remain available for questioning. Hercule Poirot, however, was not one to sit idly by. His mind buzzed with the fragments of evidence from the glasshouse, the smudged trowel, the inky leaf, the cryptic note about a debt repaid. He sensed a deeper thread running through the mystery, one that tied the killer to Sir Reginald through secrets yet to be uncovered. Today, he resolved to dig into the lives of the suspects, starting with the traces they left behind. Poirot requested permission from Inspector Barrow to examine Sir Reginald's private study, a wood-panelled room tucked at the back of the mansion, its shelves lined with botanical journals and rare manuscripts. Barrow, grumbling about meddling foreigners, reluctantly agreed, provided Poirot shared any findings. The study was a treasure trove of Sir Reginald's obsessions, its desk cluttered with papers, a magnifying glass, and a faded photograph of a younger Lady Evelyn holding an orchid. Poirot's keen eyes zeroed in on a locked drawer, its key nowhere, in sight. With a deft movement, he used a letter opener to pry it open, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a black ribbon. The envelopes bore no stamps, only handwritten initials. V.L. Count Victor Laszlo. The letters, penned in a looping script, spoke of a clandestine deal. Laszlo had supplied Sir Reginald with rare orchid specimens from the Balkans, smuggled, at great risk, in exchange for substantial payments. One letter, dated a month prior, was sharp in tone. "You have delayed too long, Reginald. My patience wears thin. Settle the debt, or I expose you." Poirot's moustache twitched as he pocketed the letters for further study, sensing a motive rooted in betrayal. He also found a small ledger beneath the letters, its pages listing transactions. Large sums paid to an unnamed source, with the final entry marked Vanda Coerulea delivered. The rare blue orchid, Poirot recalled, was among those in the glasshouse, its vibrant petals, a prize Sir Reginald had flaunted. Leaving the study, Poirot sought out the guests, who were gathered in the drawing room, their faces drawn from a sleepless night. Lady Evelyn sat by a window, staring at the glasshouse, her fingers twisting a handkerchief. Dr. Marcus Hale paced, muttering about his ruined reputation, while Miss Clara Voss perched on a sofa, her notebook now filled with frantic sketches of the crime scene. Count Laszlo leaned against a bookcase, his gaze distant but calculating. Poirot, with a disarming smile, began to probe. "Monsieur Laszlo," he said lightly, "you are a man of orchids, no? Did you share Sir Reginald's passion, or perhaps his secrets?" Laszlo's eyes flickered, but he replied smoothly, "Merely an admirer, Monsieur Poirot. My interest is purely aesthetic. Unconvinced, Poirot turned to the others, asking about Sir Reginald's recent behaviour. Lady Evelyn admitted he'd been tense, often locking himself in his study late at night. Dr. Hale, his voice bitter, hinted at Sir Reginald's ruthless tactics in the orchid trade, suggesting he'd made enemies abroad. Miss Voss, eager to contribute, mentioned overhearing an argument between Sir Reginald and an unknown caller days before, the phone slamming down after heated words about payment. Poirot listened, his mind mapping connections. The letters, the ledger, the argument, all pointing to a financial web with Sir Reginald at its centre. He returned to the Glasshouse, now empty of police but heavy with the memory of death. There, among the Vanda orchids, he found a torn envelope half buried in the soil, its edge matching the paper from the debt-repaid note. The envelope bore a faint postmark from Budapest, linking it to Laszlo's homeland. Poirot's little grey cells hummed. Had Laszlo's deal with Sir Reginald turned deadly, or was another hand at play, using the Count as a scapegoat? The glass house seemed to pulse with secrets, its silent blooms mocking his efforts to untangle the truth. As noon approached, Poirot gathered his findings, each clue a piece of a larger puzzle. The letters and ledger painted a picture of greed and betrayal, but the torn envelope suggested someone else knew of the correspondence. The killer, he suspected, was weaving a careful dance, leaving just enough to mislead. With the guests' alibis still unverified and their motives growing clearer, Poirot felt the mystery tightening like a noose. The glass house held more than orchids. It held the key to a killer's heart, and the next step would bring him closer to its beating pulse. Chapter 5. The Poison's Whisper. The midday sun filtered through the glass house, casting dappled light across the orchids, but the estate's air was thick with unease. The police had retreated to the village station to analyse the cloudy residue in the water jug, leaving the guests under a tense house arrest. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the lack of official progress, paced the mansion's library, his mind sifting through the web of clues. The smuggled orchids, the threatening letters from Count Laszlo, and the torn Budapest envelope. He suspected poison, a silent killer that fit the froth on Sir Reginald's lips, but its source and delivery remained elusive. Today, Poirot aimed to uncover how death had slipped so seamlessly into the glass house, and who among the suspects wielded the fatal dose. Poirot requested a private meeting with the estate's housekeeper, Mrs. Agnes Finch, a wiry woman with sharp eyes, who had served the Hawthorns for decades. In the servants' quarters, over a pot of strong tea, she revealed Sir Reginald's recent habits. He was particular about his evening tisane, she said, her voice low. Always took it in the glass house brewed from his own blend of herbs, kept in a locked tin. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Herbs could mask poison, and a locked tin suggested exclusivity. Mrs. Finch added that she'd seen Lady Evelyn fetching the tin the night before, her hand shaking as she measured the leaves. Poirot thanked her, his mind turning to the water jug, its cloudy contents perhaps laced with something far deadlier than tea. Returning to the glass house, Poirot examined the small table where the jug had stood. A faint ring of dried liquid marked the wood, and beside it a single orchid petal, detached, its edge curled as if scorched. He recalled the vial labelled fertilizer, now with the police, and suspected it held a botanical toxin, perhaps derived from a plant as exotic as those surrounding him. He inspected the nearby orchids, noting a cluster of bulbophyllums, their blooms small but pungent, known in botanical circles for their toxic sap. Could such a plant, or one like it, have been distilled into a lethal dose? Poirot's fingers brushed a nearby shelf where a mortar and pestle sat, its bowl stained with a greenish residue. He pocketed a sample, careful not to contaminate it, sensing it might match the vial's contents. Back in the drawing room, Poirot confronted the guests with calculated subtlety. A poison, mes amis, requires knowledge and opportunity, he said, his gaze sweeping over them. Who among you knows the secrets of plants? Dr. Marcus Hale bristled, his expertise as a botanist making him an obvious target. I study plants, not poisons, he snapped, though his eyes darted to the Glasshouse. Lady Evelyn, pale and withdrawn, murmured that she only tended the orchids' aesthetics, not their chemistry. Miss Clara Voss, ever observant, suggested that Sir Reginald's smuggling might have involved more than orchids, perhaps rare toxins from abroad. Count Laszlo, leaning casually against the mantel, offered a cryptic smile. In my country, plants are both medicine and menace, but I am no chemist, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot's questions grew sharper. He asked Lady Evelyn about the tisane, tin, noting her flinch when he mentioned its lock. She admitted preparing Sir Reginald's drink, but insisted it was routine, her voice cracking. Dr. Hale, pressed about his rivalry, revealed that Sir Reginald had once sabotaged his research by destroying a rare plant sample, fueling years of resentment. Miss Voss, eager to deflect suspicion, hinted at seeing Count Laszlo near the Glasshouse door before the scream, a claim he dismissed with a wave, calling it journalistic imagination. Poirot, undeterred, noticed a smudge of green on Laszlo's cuff, faint but telling. As evening approached, Poirot revisited the Glasshouse alone, the silence broken only by the hum of sprinklers. He found a hidden nook behind a trellis where a small notebook lay tucked beneath a pot. Its pages, in Sir Reginald's hand, detailed experiments with plant extracts, including a note on bulbophyllum toxicity, lethal in small doses. The final entry read, "Must secure supply. E suspects." Poirot's pulse quickened. Did E mean Evelyn or someone else? The notebook suggested Sir Reginald knew of the poison's potential, perhaps inviting his own demise. The Glasshouse, with its humid secrets, was closing in, each clue tightening the noose around the killer. The day's discoveries painted a picture of calculated murder, with poison as the weapon and the Glasshouse as its stage. Poirot felt the threads converging: Lady Evelyn's access, Dr. Hale's expertise, Miss Voss's prying, Laszlo's secrets. The truth was near, hidden in the delicate balance of trust and betrayal. As night fell, the mystery beckoned, promising revelations that would unravel the killer's careful facade. Chapter 6. The tangled web of Alibi's twilight draped the Hawthorne estate in a soft violet haze, the Glasshouse glowing faintly under the first stars. The guests, still confined to the mansion, grew restless, their nerves frayed by the weight of suspicion and the police's lingering presence. Hercule Poirot, his mind a whirlwind of connections, Sir Reginald's notebook, the toxic bulbophyllum, the green-stained mortar, knew the key to the murder lay in unravelling the alibis of the four suspects. Each claimed innocence, but their stories were as fragile as the orchids surrounding them, and Poirot intended to test their strength with the precision of a gardener pruning weak stems. He gathered the guests in the mansion's dining hall, where a long oak table gleamed under a chandelier's dim light. The air was thick with tension, the clink of teacups the only sound as Poirot stood, his small frame commanding the room. Mes amis, he began, his voice calm but piercing. A murder requires opportunity, and opportunity requires time. Let us revisit where each of you stood when death struck. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned their faces, noting every twitch, every averted glance. He started with Lady Evelyn, whose delicate hands gripped her teacup too tightly. She repeated her claim of being in her room, but Poirot pressed. Madame, you prepared the tisane. Did you deliver it to the Glasshouse? Her lips parted, then closed, as she admitted only to leaving it on the kitchen counter, insisting a servant took it from there. Dr. Marcus Hale, seated across from her, shifted uncomfortably when Poirot turned to him. His alibi of reading in the library wavered as Poirot revealed a detail from Mrs. Finch. The library's lamp had been cold when she checked it after the scream, suggesting no one had been there. Hale's face flushed, and he stammered that he'd stepped out briefly to the terrace for air, a claim no one could verify. Miss Clara Voss, her journalist's bravado undimmed, stuck to her story of fetching water downstairs, but Poirot noted the kitchen was near the Glasshouse door, a convenient position for a late-night wanderer, she countered with a defiant glare, saying she'd seen a shadow moving outside, possibly Count Laszlo's, but offered no proof beyond her word. Count Laszlo, lounging at the table's end, met Poirot's gaze with cool amusement. His story of writing a letter held, but Poirot confronted him about the green smudge on his cuff, suggesting contact with the Glasshouse's plants, or the mortar's residue. Laszlo laughed softly, claiming he'd brushed against foliage during the earlier tour, but his nonchalance felt rehearsed. Poirot, undeterred, revealed the Budapest envelope, asking if Laszlo's dealings with Sir Reginald extended beyond Orchids. The Count's smile tightened, and he admitted to business ties, but dismissed any deeper involvement, his fingers brushing his pocket as if by habit. Poirot excused the guests, but followed Miss Voss to the hallway, sensing her keen observation might yield more. Alone, she confided in a whisper that she'd found a crumpled note in the Glasshouse that morning, slipped under a pot, reading, "Meet me at midnight." She'd kept it secret, hoping to use it for her story, but handed it to Poirot, its handwriting matching the debt-repaid scrap. The note's implications were clear. Sir Reginald had a rendezvous, possibly with his killer. Poirot thanked her, his mind racing. Had the note lured Sir Reginald to his death, or was it planted to mislead? He returned to the Glasshouse, now a silent witness to the night's secrets. Near the bulbophyllum cluster, he found a faint scuff mark on the floor, as if someone had dragged something heavy, a pot perhaps, to conceal evidence. He also noticed a tiny shard of glass, not from the panes but thinner, like a broken syringe, hidden among the roots. It gleamed with a faint residue, possibly the poison's delivery method. Poirot's thoughts churned. The alibis were crumbling, each suspect's story riddled with holes. Lady Evelyn's access to the tisane, Hale's missing library hours, Voss's proximity to the Glasshouse, Laszlo's evasive calm, all pointed to opportunity, but the motive remained elusive. As the moon rose higher, Poirot stood among the orchids, their beauty a stark contrast to the ugliness of murder. The note, the shard, the alibis, they were threads in a tapestry of deceit, and he was close to tracing their pattern. The killer had moved with precision, but Poirot's little grey cells were sharper, ready to cut through the lies. The Glasshouse, with its whispered secrets, urged him onward, toward a truth that would expose the heart of this deadly plot. Chapter 7. The Ghost of Motives. Past the morning mist clung to the Hawthorne estate, shrouding the Glasshouse in a veil of mystery as the investigation deepened. Hercule Poirot, fortified by a strong cup of coffee, stood in the mansion's parlour, his mind weaving together the threads of evidence. The "meet me at midnight" note, the glass shard hinting at a syringe, and the faltering alibis of the 4 suspects. Each clue pointed to a calculated murder, but the why, the motive, remained as elusive as the mist outside. Poirot knew that to unmask the killer, he must uncover the hidden grudges and buried secrets that drove someone to poison Sir Reginald. Today, he would dig into the past, where the roots of this crime lay tangled. Poirot began by seeking out the estate's gardener, Mr. Thomas Reed, a grizzled man with hands rough as bark, who had tended the Glasshouse for years. In a quiet corner of the potting shed, Reed revealed that Sir Reginald's obsession with orchids had grown ruthless in recent months. He'd do anything for a rare bloom, Reed said, his voice heavy. Crossed some dangerous folk, he did, especially in the trade. He mentioned a heated confrontation Sir Reginald had with Dr. Marcus Hale a year ago, when Hale accused him of sabotaging a research grant, costing Hale his university post. Reed also recalled seeing Count Laszlo arrive weeks earlier, delivering a crate of orchids under cover of night, his demeanour secretive and tense. Armed with this, Poirot returned to the mansion and requested a private word with Lady Evelyn in the rose garden, away from prying ears. Her face, framed by the fading blooms, was drawn, her eyes haunted. Poirot probed gently, asking about her husband's enemies. She admitted Sir Reginald's dealings had strained their marriage, particularly his secrecy about funds drained from their accounts. He said it was for the orchids, she whispered. But I found receipts for payments to Budapest, large ones. When Poirot mentioned the initials E in Sir Reginald's notebook, her hands trembled, and she insisted it couldn't refer to her, though her voice lacked conviction. Next, Poirot cornered Dr. Hale in the library, where the botanist was, leafing through a journal with nervous energy. Poirot confronted him about the grant sabotage, and Hale's composure cracked. "Reginald ruined me," he spat, his fists clenched. "He spread lies to secure his own funding, leaving me jobless. I'd have killed him if I thought it'd bring my career back." His words hung heavy, a motive laid bare. But Poirot noted Hale's lack of knowledge about the glass shard. Had he overlooked a critical detail, or was he playing innocent? Miss Clara Voss was next, found in the conservatory, typing furiously on a portable typewriter. Poirot asked about her research into Sir Reginald's dealings, and she leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "He was neck-deep in the black market orchid trade," she said, lowering her voice. "I've got sources saying he owed money to some shady collectors, maybe even Laszlo. I was going to expose him." Her ambition was clear, but Poirot wondered if her snooping had pushed her to silence Sir Reginald before he could discredit her story. Her knowledge of the midnight note suggested she'd been closer to the truth than she let on. Finally, Poirot found Count Laszlo in the billiard room, idly rolling a cue ball. When pressed about the Budapest payments, Laszlo's charm faltered. "Business, Monsieur Poirot," he said coolly. "Reginald owed me for rare specimens, nothing more." But when Poirot mentioned the threatening letter, Laszlo's jaw tightened, and he admitted Sir Reginald had delayed payments, risking exposure of their smuggling ring. "I am no killer," he insisted, but the green smudge on his cuff and his evasive gaze told a different story. As evening settled, Poirot retreated to the Glasshouse, its humid air a stark contrast to the cold motives he'd uncovered. He found a faint scratch on a workbench, where a syringe might have rested, its needle aligned with the glass shard's residue. The motives: Lady Evelyn's betrayal, Hale's revenge, Voss's ambition, Laszlo's greed, wove a tangled web, but none fully explained the precision of the poison's delivery. Poirot's little grey cells churned, sensing the killer had left one final clue, hidden among the orchids, waiting to be plucked. The glasshouse, with its silent blooms, held the answer, and the next step would bring the truth into sharper focus. Chapter 8. The Orchid's Silent Witness. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the glasshouse, its panes streaked with condensation, as if weeping for the secrets they held. Hercule Poirot stood among the orchids, his mind a kaleidoscope of motives: Lady Evelyn's strained marriage, Dr. Hale's bitter vendetta, Miss Voss's ruthless ambition, and Count Laszlo's shadowy dealings. The glass shard, the midnight note, and the toxic bulbophyllum pointed to a meticulous killer, but the final piece of the puzzle remained just out of reach. Poirot sensed the glasshouse itself was a silent witness, its blooms guarding clues only his keen intellect could coax into the light. Today, he would unravel the physical traces left behind, letting the orchids speak. Poirot began by revisiting the crime scene, now eerily quiet without the police's bustle. He knelt near the spot where Sir Reginald had fallen, his eyes tracing the faint scuff marks and the crushed phalaenopsis petals scattered like a confession. He noticed a subtle irregularity in the soil beneath a nearby trellis, where the earth was slightly raised, as if recently disturbed. Using a small trowel, he carefully dug, uncovering a tiny metal key, its surface etched with a floral design. It was too delicate for a door, more suited to a private box or diary, perhaps the locked tin Mrs. Finch had mentioned, where Sir Reginald kept his tisane herbs. Poirot pocketed the key, its significance a spark in his mind. He moved to the workbench, where the mortar and pestle with its greenish residue still sat. Beside it, he found a faint imprint in the dust, rectangular and shallow, as if a small book or case had been removed. Poirot recalled Sir Reginald's notebook with its cryptic E-suspects entry, and wondered if another diary or ledger had been hidden here, perhaps taken by the killer to conceal their tracks. He examined the bulbophyllum cluster nearby, noting a single stem bent unnaturally, as if someone had reached through to retrieve something, or to hide it. A closer look revealed a thread of dark fabric caught on a thorn, its weave matching the shawl Lady Evelyn had worn the night of the murder. Poirot sought out the housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, in the kitchen, where she was polishing silver with nervous energy. He showed her the key and her eyes widened. "That's for Sir Reginald's herb tin," she confirmed. "He kept it in his study, locked away. Only he and Lady Evelyn had access." When Poirot asked if she'd seen anyone near the tin that night, she hesitated, then admitted catching Dr. Hale lingering near the study door after dinner, looking agitated. Poirot thanked her, his suspicions sharpening. Hale's botanical expertise could have guided him to the tin's contents, but Lady Evelyn's access made her equally suspect. In the drawing room, Poirot gathered the guests, his demeanour calm but probing. He held up the key, watching their reactions. Lady Evelyn's face paled, her fingers twisting her shawl, where a tiny tear now matched the thread he'd found. Dr. Hale's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to the door. Miss Voss, ever alert, leaned forward, asking if the key unlocked a clue to the poison. Count Laszlo, his composure intact, merely raised an eyebrow, but Poirot noticed his hand clench briefly. "This key," Poirot said, unlocks more than a tin. It unlocks a motive. Who among you knew what Sir Reginald hid? No one answered, but the silence was heavy with guilt. Returning to the Glasshouse, Poirot tested the key on a small metal box hidden behind a row of cattleyas, its lock clicking open to reveal a vial of dried leaves, bulbophyllum, labelled with a warning, toxic, handle with care. A folded note inside read, E, must not know, in Sir Reginald's hand. The initials again, Evelyn, or another. Poirot's mind raced. The tin, the vial, the note, the thread, all pointed to a killer who knew the Glasshouse intimately, who moved among its blooms with purpose. Lady Evelyn's shawl, Hale's proximity, Voss's nosiness, Laszlo's secrecy. Each could have wielded the poison, but the key suggested a deeper betrayal. As dusk settled, the Glasshouse seemed to pulse with secrets, its orchids silent witnesses to a deadly act. Poirot's little grey cells were alight, piecing together the final clues. The killer had left a trail, delicate as a petal but sharp as a thorn, and Poirot was closing in. The truth, like an orchid in bloom, was about to unfold, leading to a confrontation that would expose the heart of this murderous plot. Chapter 9. The trap is set. The evening sky over the Hawthorne estate burned crimson, casting an ominous glow through the Glasshouse, where the orchids stood like sentinels guarding their secrets. Hercule Poirot, his mind sharpened by the day's discoveries, the floral key, the toxic leaves, the torn shawl thread, and the cryptic note, knew the killer's identity was within reach. The clues pointed to a meticulous crime, one woven with intimate knowledge of Sir Reginald's habits and the Glasshouse's deadly flora. But to unmask the murderer, Poirot needed more than evidence. He needed a confession. Tonight, he would set a trap, using the suspect's own fears and secrets to draw the truth into the open. Poirot requested Inspector Barrow's permission to gather the guests in the Glasshouse after dinner, claiming he had a breakthrough to share. Barrow, sceptical but intrigued, agreed, stationing 2 officers nearby. As the group assembled among the orchids, the air was thick with tension, the humid warmth amplifying their unease. Lady Evelyn stood near a cluster of cattleyas, her hands clasped tightly, the tear in her shawl now mended but conspicuous to Poirot's eye. Dr. Marcus Hale hovered by the workbench, his fingers twitching as if itching to flee. Miss Clara Voss, her notebook tucked away, scanned the room with a predator's focus. Count Victor Laszlo leaned against a trellis, his casual air betrayed by a faint sheen of sweat on his brow. Poirot began, his voice steady and deliberate. Mes amis, the murder of Sir Reginald was no impulse. It was a dance of precision, choreographed with poison and deceit. The key to his herb tin, the bulbophyllum's toxin, the note luring him to his death, all point to one among you. He paused, letting the words sink in, watching their faces. He held up the key, its floral design glinting under the Glasshouse lights. This unlocked the tin where death was brewed, but it also unlocks a truth. The killer knew Sir Reginald's rituals intimately. Lady Evelyn's breath caught, and Poirot turned to her. Madame, you handled the tisane. Did you know what the tin concealed? She shook her head, her eyes wide, but her trembling betrayed her. Turning to Dr. Hale, Poirot continued, Monsieur, your knowledge of plants rivals Sir Reginald's. Did your resentment lead you to the bulbophyllum, a poison you could wield? Hale's face reddened, his denial sharp but unsteady. Poirot then faced Miss Voss, her ambition a glaring motive. "Mademoiselle, you sought a story to make your name. Did you silence Sir Reginald to protect your scoop?" Voss laughed nervously, insisting she only observed, not acted. Finally, Poirot addressed Laszlo, holding up the Budapest envelope. "Count, your dealings with Sir Reginald were steeped in secrecy. Did his unpaid debts drive you to murder?" Laszlo's smile was thin, his voice cool as he denied any violence. Poirot stepped to the centre, revealing his trap. "I have asked the police to test the glass shard for fingerprints. One of you touched a syringe, the poison's delivery. The results will come tonight. It was a bluff. The shard was too small for clear prints." But Poirot watched for reactions. Dr. Hale's hands clenched. Voss's eyes darted to the door. Laszlo remained still, but Lady Evelyn's face crumpled, her voice a whisper. "It wasn't me," she said, unprompted, her words a crack in her facade. Poirot pressed, mentioning the shawl thread, and she gasped, claiming it caught on a thorn by accident. The others shifted, their alibis fraying under the pressure of Poirot's gaze. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered in the glass house, his trap set. He noticed a faint mark on the floor near the bulbar film, a smudge of wax, as if a candle had dripped during a clandestine act. It matched a candle in Lady Evelyn's room, seen by Mrs. Finch. The killer, Poirot realized, had moved in the dark, their steps careful but not flawless. The glass house, with its watchful orchids, had recorded their misstep, and Poirot's bluff would soon force their hand. The night was young, and the truth was blooming, ready to be plucked in the final act of this deadly drama. Chapter 10. The Bloom of Truth. The night enveloped the Hawthorne estate, the glass house glowing like a lantern against the dark, its orchids silent witnesses to the final act of a deadly drama. Hercule Poirot, his little grey cells alight with the culmination of clues, the floral key, the toxic bulbar film, the midnight note, the wax smudge, and the torn shawl thread, stood ready to unmask Sir Reginald's killer. His trap, set with a calculated bluff about fingerprints, had stirred the suspects, their nerves frayed as the hour of revelation approached. The glass house, with its humid air and tangled secrets, was the stage for Poirot's denouement, where every motive, every lie, would be laid bare. He had summoned the guests, Inspector Barrow, and the officers to the glass house, determined to expose the murderer in the very place where death had struck. The group gathered under the glass house's artificial lights, the orchids casting eerie shadows across their faces. Lady Evelyn stood near the cattleyas, her mended shawl draped tightly around her, her eyes darting nervously. Dr. Marcus Hale lingered by the workbench, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his jaw set with defiance. Miss Clara Voss, her notebook absent for once, stood with arms crossed, her gaze sharp but uneasy. Count Victor Laszlo leaned against a trellis, his usual charm replaced by a wary stillness. Inspector Barrow, arms folded, watched Poirot with grudging respect, while the officers flanked the exits, ensuring no one could flee. Poirot began, his voice steady, cutting through the humid silence. "Mes amis, a murder is a puzzle, and this one is complete. Sir Reginald Hawthorne died by poison, delivered with precision in this very glass house. The clues, the vial, the key, the note, the thread, have spoken, and the killer stands among us." He paced slowly, his eyes locking onto each suspect in turn. "Let us reconstruct the night. Sir Reginald was lured here at midnight by a note. Meet me at midnight." He drank his tisane, brewed from his locked tin, but it was laced with a toxin from the bulbophyllum, a plant whose deadly sap was distilled into a syringe, its shard left behind. He turned to Lady Evelyn, his tone gentle but probing. "Madame, you prepared the tisane, and your shawl thread was found near the poison source. The wax smudge from your candle marks your presence here in the dark. Why?" Evelyn's face crumpled, tears welling. "I loved him," she sobbed, "but he was ruining us. The smuggling, the debts. He hid it all from me. I found his notebook, saw E-suspects, and thought he meant me. I confronted him that night, but I didn't kill him." Her words rang with truth, but Poirot noted her access to the tin and her presence in the Glasshouse. Next, he faced Dr. Hale. "Monsieur, your resentment was deep. Sir Reginald cost you your career, and your knowledge of plants made you a master of poison. You were seen near the study where the tin was kept. Did you tamper with it?" Hale's face flushed with anger. "I hated him, yes, but I'm no murderer. I was in the library, or near it. I wanted to steal his research, not his life." His alibi, already weakened, faltered further, but Poirot saw no trace of the syringe's handling in Hale's nervous demeanour. Poirot turned to Miss Voss, his gaze piercing. "Mademoiselle, your ambition drove you to dig into Sir Reginald's secrets. You found the midnight note, kept it hidden to protect your story. Were you here, watching, or acting?" Voss's eyes flashed. "I was close, yes, chasing the scoop of a lifetime. I saw someone in the Glasshouse, but I swear it wasn't me who poisoned him." Her proximity to the scene and her secrecy made her suspect, but her lack of botanical knowledge weakened her as the culprit. Finally, Poirot addressed Count Laszlo, holding up the Budapest envelope. "Monsieur, your letters demanded payment for smuggled orchids. Sir Reginald's refusal threatened your operation. The green smudge on your cuff, the vial in your pocket. Did you deliver death to settle the debt?" Laszlo's smile was cold. "Business disputes, Monsieur Poirot, do not always end in murder. I was in my room, writing, not killing, but his evasive calm and the smudge tied him to the Glasshouse's deadly tools." Poirot paused, letting the tension build. "The killer," he declared, "knew the tin's contents, the poison's preparation, and Sir Reginald's habits. They moved in the dark, leaving a wax smudge, a thread, and a shard. But one clue seals their fate." He produced the metal box from behind the cattleyas, unlocking it with the floral key. Inside was a second note, overlooked until now, in Sir Reginald's hand. "VL threatens exposure. Must act." Poirot's eyes locked onto Laszlo. "Count, you were not just a supplier. You blackmailed Sir Reginald, threatening to expose his smuggling to the authorities unless he paid. He refused, and you acted." Laszlo's composure cracked, his hand twitching toward his pocket. "Nonsense," he hissed. But Poirot continued, relentless. "You knew the bulbophyllum's toxin, learned from your trade. You slipped into the Glasshouse, using a syringe to lace the tisane tin with poison prepared in the mortar. The note lured him here, and you waited, ensuring he drank. The thread, the wax, they were missteps, meant to point to Lady Evelyn, a convenient scapegoat." The officers stepped closer, as Laszlo's face paled. "You have no proof," he spat. But Poirot held up the glass shard, his bluff now a weapon. "The syringe's residue matches the vial in your pocket, Count. The police will confirm it." Laszlo lunged for the door, but the officers seized him, his struggle brief and futile. Lady Evelyn wept. Hale exhaled in relief, and Voss scribbled furiously, her story now complete. Poirot turned to Barrow. The Count acted alone, driven by greed and fear of exposure. The Glasshouse, with its orchids, was his stage, but it betrayed him. Barrow nodded, impressed, as Laszlo was led away, his charm shattered. As the Glasshouse fell silent, Poirot gazed at the orchids, their beauty untouched by the ugliness of murder. The truth had bloomed, as inevitable as a flower in spring. He turned to the group, his voice soft. Justice is served, but the heart grieves for what greed destroys. The mystery was solved, the killer unmasked, and the Glasshouse stood as a testament to Poirot's genius. Thank you for joining this twisting tale of the Glasshouse death. If you've enjoyed the suspense, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. Stay tuned for more mysteries where truth hides in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered.